Welcome to episode 2 of Art History with Caroline Quintanar. This week we have a lot of information to go over, a lot of interesting things happening in the news. The Medieval magazine will be released on Monday looking at medieval travel, and I've also chosen Soria, Spain as our medieval travel location. I'll be looking at some different Romanesque places located within the town and also give you some tips on places to get something tasty to eat and to drink. So let's see what's happening in the news this week. So just as of yesterday, August 2nd, 2018, information came out about who built Stonehenge. Now, normally we tend to think about how it was built, why it was built. There's still quite a bit of mystery behind the way that it was constructed. How did you move these monoliths from one location to the other and to the specific site? There's a lot of theories and a lot of studies going into that. But a lot of times we tend to forget who built it. Obviously there were people behind this, and it's nice to know a little bit more about them. So according to the BBC article, these first people that came from West Wales. Now, this is very interesting because the blue stones that were originally used to create the site as well came from that area also. So we're looking at about 150 miles to 240 kilometers away. That's not close. So that gives us an indication that these people immigrated over to this area, and it was quite an important site. Now, how did they come to get these findings? According to the article, they said that the high temperatures used for the cremation of these people crystallized the skull. And so what they're able to do is to focus on some of those chemicals and be able to pinpoint the origin. Now, this is very interesting because then they can study a little bit more about these people. Now, there's more details in the article. So like our previous episode, I'll have the link at the bottom beneath the video for you to read onwards. So next in the news is the return of a 13th century medieval Bible to Canterbury Cathedral. Now, this 13th century Bible is only one of a handful that actually remained after the dissolution of the cathedral during the Reformation. So it's been outside of its original location for almost 500 years. Now, this little Bible is a little pocket-sized Bible. It has 695 pages. So it's a very interesting piece, and it's very happy to be back in its original home. What's great about this and what makes it important news-wise is that medieval manuscripts hold so much important information, both looking at the materials, looking at the way that they were written, the way that they were designed, the way that they were bound. And they're also pieces of history that a lot of times get lost. They're easily burned, they're easily discarded and can disappear. So this is great news for Canterbury Cathedral. I look forward to hearing more about this Bible and seeing what information comes to light after some more research. Finally in the news, we have some interesting information coming out of Trinity College, Dublin. Working on a particular project mixing GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems, and looking at medieval documents, in this case particularly papal taxation documents. There's been some really interesting maps that have been created which allows you to look at the wealthiest places in Ireland circa 1300. Now, this is a really great example of bringing together different sectors, different methods of studying, and being able to put something together to visually study. So if you see this image here, this is one of the maps that comes from this particular study. Now, this is only looking at Ireland at the moment, but the project is looking to branch out further into the UK, into France, into mainland Europe, to provide us this digital atlas of this information. We have a wealth of information that comes from taxation that shows us, what people were earning, what things were paid. Also gives you information about population, the effect of catastrophes such as invasions or the Black Death. The link to read more about this is also at the bottom of the video in the links section, and you'll be able to read more, and you have some more maps to look at as well. One thing to keep your eye on in the next few days is the Castle World Cup happening on Twitter. Now, we've had the Cathedral World Cup before, which has proved to be very interesting and entertaining, and these particular initiatives are fantastic to learn about different locations that you may not have heard of before. So the Castle World Cup will feature castles from all around the world. You have different voting, and you can follow it via the hashtag. So the hashtag, as you can see here below, which is hashtag Castle World Cup. Have a look at that if you're on Twitter. Definitely cast your vote and take some time to look at some different locations that you may not have known before. It'll be very interesting to see who wins from this particular exercise, but just as the Cathedral World Cup turned out to be, it's very fun. It's a great way to also kind of connect with people who are interested in the same things and learn about some new castles along the way. So the Medieval magazine is almost out for publication. It will be out on Monday. And we're looking at medieval travel. Now, we're not looking at specifically only locations to visit that are medieval, but we're looking at it from the perspective of a medieval traveler. You know, there was a lot of movement at the time in all different regions, and we're looking at that from those different perspectives. So I have some different articles about medieval travel bloggers, so those who kept kind of notes and tabs on the different places they had been with some explanations and some details, which are always entertaining to read about. We look at the medieval interpretation of Alexander the Great's celestial journey. Also looking at Viking traders and travelers. You know, how far did they actually travel to? How far were their trade routes? And then we do have a medieval location to visit, which is Deal Castle. So we'll be giving you some tips on where to go to get there, when to visit, and some of the highlights of that particular location. So the magazine will be available on Monday. You can get that via our website, which is www.themedievalmagazine.com. So like always, you can get the individual issue if you'd like, but you have the option to sign up for a continuous subscription. So with a continuous subscription, what you'll get is the magazine every time it's published directly to your inbox. We work digitally, so you always have access to it. Even after you've purchased it, you can go back and look at some of the previous issues as well. So this week's travel destination is Soria, Spain. Soria is located in Castilla y León, up against the Rio Duero in central Spain. It's about 2.5 hours away from Madrid, and the town itself comprises a lot of phenomenal Romanesque locations that are all within walking distance. So I'm going to share with you 3 different locations along with some tips on different food and different drink that you can experience there. So let's start with our first location. Our first stop is San Juan de Duero. That is right up against the Rio Duero. It's a 12th century church that has a 13th century cloister. Now, unfortunately, it's not fully functioning as some of its counterparts in the area. That's due to that majority of the cloister itself is in ruin. Now, it is very famous for its particular arches, as you can see in the photo that I included in the beginning. So the church itself is from the 12th century. You can see amazing examples of Romanesque decoration, Romanesque engineering. And then the cloister, you have the iconic arches. They're absolutely beautiful. Something you would imagine to come out of a fantasy, such as, you know, a Tolkien-esque world. Very, very similar to almost Rivendell, if I would make a comparison. And it's just beautiful. It's up against the river. You can walk around, and the area itself, you can understand why it was built there. It's very, very peaceful. You can see it was a place that people would want to go to retreat, to have some time with God as well. Now, like I said, it's unfortunately not intact like its counterparts in the area, so we can only imagine what the full cloister would have looked like during its heyday. So let's take a look at our next location. So our next stop is literally just up the road from San Juan de Duero. That's the Concatedral de San Pedro de Soria, which is the co-cathedral of St. Peter in Soria. So you just walk up the road towards the town from San Juan de Duero, and you come upon this co-cathedral. Now the co-cathedral is still working. It has a lot of different elements from the beginning of its creation, which was in the 12th century as well. Then you have the cloister from the 13th century, so you can kind of see its evolution. There's even modern additions inside of the church itself from around the year 2000. But what makes this place really special is the cloister itself. Now, the way I stumbled upon it as I was walking from San Juan de Duero, going into the center of Soria, and I saw it and I thought, you know, I bet this has some Romanesque parts to it. I want to go and check. Went inside. You can see some of the older remnants and the new ones as well. And I poked my head into the cloister. This lovely Spanish woman who was just in there maintaining some things, cleaning up some things, said, "Oh, did you want to see the cloister?" I said, yes, please let me in. She opened the door, and it was as if I stepped into the 12th century. It is absolutely breathtaking. The capitals are intact. The columns are intact. Almost parts of the wood ceiling are intact as well. And it's not frequented by a lot of visitors, but you can go in and see it. So I've included some of my own images here for you to see kind of what I experienced. The people of Soria are extremely kind and very welcoming, and definitely want to share this history with you. So I encourage you to visit the church and try to visit the cloister if it's open and just have a look. It really is just crossing that threshold back in time. So let's go look at our final destination. So our final destination of Hidden Gems of Soria is San Juan de Rabanera. Now this is in the center of Soria. It is a precious 12th century church. Probably one of the churches that has left its biggest mark on me in my travels throughout Spain. If you followed my blog, you've probably seen a lot of pictures of this particular church, especially the corbels outside are in great condition, very interesting. The tympanum also, and the portico is in great condition and really allows you to kind of see what it would have looked like at the time of construction. It's not very big, it's not large, it's not a big cathedral. It's a smaller church, and when you go inside you kind of feel that it's quite cozy. The apse itself is very cozy, and you get that really kind of Romanesque feeling in comparison to Gothic, which is very high and very ceilings are high, there's lots of windows, it's very airy. The Romanesque it's very cozy. It's kind of getting like a little historical hug. Now this church, it's one of my favorite because it has some of the quirkiest sculptures that I've seen in all of my travels. So just here are a few examples of some of the different corbels and some of the different capitals that you can see there. So like its other 12th century counterparts in the area, it is still functioning. So you can see the updates through the ages, different additions throughout the centuries, and actually it is still a functioning church today. So it's from the 12th century. It also comes up in a censor from Alfonso X in 1270. So there's a lot of substantial information about this particular building. And it's located right in the center of town. So you can kind of pop around to see it after you've had some food or drink, and definitely get to experience what a resident in the area in the 12th century would have seen when they came up to that church. Now, although this isn't medieval, one thing that I have to share is the food in Soria is absolutely delicious. The best croquetas I've ever had in my 10 years of living abroad, 9 of them were in Madrid. The best croquetas ever I had in Soria. They were about the size of my hand, so the size of my fist, and oh, just thinking about it now actually makes my mouth water. Also, what's really important to try while you're in Soria is the wine. So, very famous wine, which is Ribera de Duero, which basically means on the riverside of the Duero River, which is right there, is primarily made in this region. Delicious, fantastic, you can't go wrong. All of the different food that they offer there, both winter and summer, is delicious. You have a lot of very hearty stews. There's also one of my favorite dishes, which is consommé, which is similar to kind of like a bone broth. And if you visit in winter, it just warms you up deep into your soul and kind of gets you excited to go out and explore. So Soria itself is kind of a small town, so you can get around to all these places that I've discussed today by walking. So I highly recommend it as kind of a weekend trip. The accommodation in the area is very nice as well. The people are extremely welcoming, and you will not be disappointed. So thank you very much for joining me on this second episode of Art History with Caroline Quintanar. I have links at the bottom in the comments section discussing the news, links to the medieval magazine, and then links to information about visiting Soria. So look forward to seeing you again next week, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend.